What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about SoundHound, I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Friday's push lower has everyone kind of wondering what is coming next week. And so starting off with macro data, we have a lot of Fed speakers throughout this upcoming week. And obviously yours truly, Powell, is speaking on Tuesday. So given the circumstances, there's a lot of hot topics for them to bring up. But as far as good data points that could cause a nice recovery in the broader market, because of the shutdown, a lot of the key ones are still paused. So unfortunately, it's not really going to be coming from those data points to save the market. And most likely, a lot of the Fed speakers, I don't really see them, for the most part, saving the market. If anything, they might cause a little bit more damage potentially. Aside from that, companies unveiling their earnings. This, in my opinion, is going to be that saving grace. So we have a lot of big banks, a lot of big names, and if they come in better than anticipated, give good future guidance, that could really save the broader market. So in my opinion, I do feel like it will come down to this. At the same time, it all depends on what happens over this weekend. I think just generally there's a lot of things that could happen, and this is why we did see, even after hours on Friday, this crazy push lower, because like this weekend there's a lot of things that could happen. You could see things really escalate, or you could see Trump just say, hey, you know what, us in China, we figured our stuff out, and whatever else. So it's going to be a little bit more of a crazy roller coaster over the next little bit. One thing to take note of though, I've kind of brought this up on some other videos, but based on Friday, you see algorithmic trading. That was the main culprit on what really pushed the broader market down. So in my opinion, I do feel Friday's push lower was unjustified, and it was artificially done through algorithmic trading. So at the end of the day, was it justified? Not really. Could it go lower? Yes. But I think there's a good chance, especially with a lot of big banks and a lot of big companies unveiling their earnings, I do feel like there is a little bit more upside potentially. So again, just stay tuned for that. I'll go over the technicals near the end of the video, but aside from that, there really isn't anything specific to SoundHound to kind of expect. So no fireside chats. Doesn't look like they're at any events. This one did conclude last week, and honestly, I think that this was the most successful one out of them all. So they did go to the CCW Europe in Amsterdam. They did a lot of PR about this. So this one they were really trying to hype up. But aside from that, there wasn't and isn't really anything coming out this upcoming week. So again, it's going to be largely companies unveiling their earnings as well as Fed speakers, kind of to save potentially the broader market. As far as shorts, so they did increase about 27,000 shares, so not all that much. And given the fact that there is roughly around 500,000 shares, they could have easily exhausted all of that and really hit SoundHound hard, but they didn't. So in my opinion, I do see that as relatively optimistic. But going into this upcoming week, 31.33% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 114.46 million shares overall being shorted. DTC sitting at 1.92 days, so that does signal that shorts are rather overextended. So potentially they could be returning this whole week, as they might feel that today's or Friday's push lower was unjustified. So by them returning, they could be adding some certain level of buying pressure, so that might ultimately help SoundHound. And I think that there's a lot of other stocks that's kind of in this same circumstance. But going into this week though, 31.3% of the free float still is relatively high. From a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $19 to $20 range by the end of next Friday. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub 16. So definitely a lot more upside is anticipated. One thing to take note of though is this is the open interest. So you don't really have anything. So with it closing at 17.36 on Friday, so that does mean that the 17 and below strike prices are considered in the money, but you don't see anything. So you won't be seeing any gamma squeeze or whatever else. Aside from that, there really hasn't been all that much in news from SoundHound. SEC filings, you did have a couple Form 4s that was submitted yesterday or after hours on Friday. And so if we kind of pop this open, it does show various individuals did sell. So it was part of the trading plan. So this is how they can do it while in a blackout period, because right now we have a blackout period until the date of their earnings. But you can see it was transaction code S, so meaning it was a actual straight up sell. It was not for tax purposes. So looks like CEO did sell 118,000 shares, still leaving them with a grand total of 2.3 million. So definitely pretty good stuff for that. The second one was this individual right over here. So the CTO, so Timothy, same type of thing. So trading plan right here that was adopted December 2024. They sold, it looks like 70,000 shares, transaction code S. So again, that is for tax purposes. And then last but not least, you have this individual right here who is a VP of engineering. So Majid, if I'm saying that right, probably not. My apologies. Transaction code S, 41,000 shares. So not necessarily the best. It was planned ahead of time. I don't really see this as something negative, although if we do start to see more and more of this, then that could be a potential red flag. When I first started covering SoundHound, you had everyone and their dog, all insiders, selling, and that was a very big red flag, and that really kept it below that $6 range for quite some time. So again, I'm not really too worried about these three, but if it does start to see a trend, that could be a little bit more of a negative. But aside from that, going into this upcoming week with it at 1736, it is right below this pivot point. So trading between this pivot and this S1. So 1596 is going to be that next strong support. 1742 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. So given the circumstances, I do feel, especially with a lot of the Fed speakers and a lot of the hot topics that they could bring up, 1596 could be touched. But realistically, I don't see it breaking below that. So if anything, it might hit that and kind of move higher. But 1742 and then 1887 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. Aside from all of that fun stuff. So on the actual chart today, or I guess I keep saying today, but Friday, it did break below that 10-day moving average. So signaling that momentum is breaking. Again, I think a lot of that push lower was just artificially done. So whether you want to actually take that for face value or not, I'll leave it up to you. But looking at the market position, you do see not much willing buyers up until it looks like that 1613 range. So this is where if there is kind of a surge or resurgence of fear, you could see a push lower because of that. So kind of matching with that support level that I mentioned from the fib levels. So essentially you could see more downside, it bouncing off of that, and in theory you'll have a rush of value investors really getting in, because by it hitting that point, it would really cause the stochastic RSI to be very oversold. So at the end of the day, yes, I do feel like there might be a little bit more downside. Is any of it justified? Not so much. We've even heard Powell recently, I think also at the Jackson Hole Symposium, saying that, hey, you know what, like all these tariffs we thought were going to be so damaging, turns out they really weren't. And so he himself said that. He's more concerned over labor data right now, not necessarily tariffs or inflation. So in my opinion, yes, the whole geopolitical issue between China and the States is something to be concerned over and just monitor, but it might be a very good buying opportunity. But you do your own thing. Obviously, I'm not here to get you to buy nor to sell or anything else. But like I said, I do feel that there will be a little bit more of a consolidation. And then from there, it should really move higher. No different than actually what happened right over here at the tail end of September when it had that nice spike, consolidated, hit a key support level, and then it moved higher. So again, that could most likely play out. So let me know your thoughts on SoundHound. Where do you realistically see things going for this week? So throw your price predictions. Do you think that we're going to be going above 20, or do you think that we're going to go polar opposite and sub I don't know, 14, 13. So what's your kind of general thoughts on SoundHound? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile too. Pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.